Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. I am so glad you are here. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and on today's solo episode, we're exploring the topic of self-love. We're gearing up for that favorite Hallmark holiday that's just around the corner. You know, that one that loves to condition us and put pressure on us as individuals, or if you're in a partnership, about how you celebrate love. Or if you're somebody who's single, that you should feel really bad that you're single and don't have somebody romantically to love. And I am here to say that love begins with yourself. And so, as this holiday creeps in, it's really an opportunity to love yourself first so that you can then bring that love, that vibration, that energy into the other relationships in your life, whether they're platonic, whether it's romantic, whether it's familiar. But the self-love is really where it starts. So whether you're listening to this podcast on a walk, while you're cooking in the kitchen, or just lounging around, I welcome you to settle in and let's get centered. I'd really say that self-love is at the essence, love in general is at the essence of what keeps us centered as human beings in this world. I think love is one of the most powerful forces that we can embody, value, that we can live by. And self love is sometimes not really thought about. I think in our culture, love is talked about something we give away, something we share with somebody else, or something that we get or receive from somebody else or something else. But I think we really miss the mark in our culture of teaching our children, of teaching ourselves how to love and let love be this glowing seed within each of us that gets to grow and expand from the inside out. There's so much pressure in our society when you're navigating your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, maybe into your 50s and 60s, to find your person, to find your partner in life, to find this one and true love. So all of our time and energy gets really wrapped up into looking externally for somebody else or something else to love and to love us back. But loving ourselves fully and entirely is honestly like a superpower. When we practice self-love, we become unstoppable. And I think there's this misconception that if we are, as an individual, practice self-love, then we're narcissistic, we're self-indulgent. But it doesn't have to look that way. I think there's a big difference between practicing self-love and then where it becomes narcissistic. Like they are on different sides of the spectrum. I see self-love as being a foundational practice to our self-care routines because it's not just what do we do to feed ourselves and move our body and the people that we surround ourselves with or the boundaries we set. But self-love is really this way that we relate to ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves. So I define self-love as this act of fully embracing and accepting yourself just as you are. And self-compassion is, in my point of view, a really beautiful way to express self-love. When we're practicing self-compassion, we are sending care and kindness to ourselves, which is a form of self-love. I welcome you to pause right here and bring to mind somebody in your life that's really loving, that's really caring, that's really nurturing. You can see this action with maybe how they take care of themselves or how they take care of you or how you watch them nurture their child or their plants or their animal. And as you bring this person to mind, notice how your body feels as you think about being around this person. Is there a smile on your face? Do you feel warmth? Do you notice there's this like ease that melts and drips down your body? Is there like a desire to want to hug them or be held? What does that feel like in your body? To just notice what being around loving energy feels like. And so when we can feel that type of energy, that palpable sensation, it's like, what would it be like to then give that to ourselves? As social beings and creatures in this world, we do need each other. We do need each other to survive and thrive. And yet, sometimes we can get into these patterns and conditions of searching for that love to feed us outside of ourselves. And if we're constantly looking for the external world to feed us that love, we're going to show up pretty hungry and disappointed. This is where I get really passionate of we get to practice, and I am right there in the camp with you. It is a practice to love on ourselves so that we can wake up each day with that inner warmth and cup already filled. And anything else that comes our way just gets to be extra beautifulness that supports our cup overflowing. And we get to then continue to give and give without dipping into reserves, without running on empty, without feeling like we're a cat scratching and clawing at the wall for something else to fill us. I've personally been on my own journey of practicing self love. And for a while, I was kind of like, what do you mean? Like, I already practice a lot of self love. Like, I'm so kind to my body. I ask my body, what does it want to eat? I'm really good about moving it. I put her to bed at a reasonable hour. All of these things in the external world that I'm supposed to, quote unquote, do to practice self care and self kindness. And then it clicked years ago of, oh, well, how am I talking to myself? What's the language that I'm using or the pressure? What is my own relationship to self? And when I get quiet to listen or when I'm journaling and can notice what gets dumped out on the pages, I can see that there's some criticalness. There's a lot of pressure I put on myself and put on others. And that hasn't really worked. You know, I don't thrive in that kind of environment when things are critical. And so I've really been working on for the last few years, turning that dial to be more playful, to be more light, to be more loving. And believe me, as I share this, I don't do this perfectly all of the time, but the awareness and the intention is there. And what I've noticed is that then affects in a good way how I can hold a conversation with my partner, especially when I'm ticked off, or how I can stand up for myself or take care of myself if something happens. And as I continue to deepen my education and my work and learning about internal family systems and starting to bring some of those pieces into my coaching, what's interesting is all of the healing that happens in our life, all of the parts of us that are looking to be healed and set free and to be given space and acknowledgement, it begins with awareness and love. And love can look like a lot of things. It can be curiosity, it can be compassion, it can be tenderness. It can just be acknowledging, like, I see you, I feel you, I'm here with you. One of my biggest values is love. It's one of my core values. And when I sit with that and notice, where am I not in alignment with that value? One of the insights that comes up is my judgment mind. My mind can get pretty judgy. And when the mind gets judgy, it's not loving, it's not curious, and it's definitely and most typically not kind. And so practicing listening to myself has given me so much insight into how can I practice more self-love. So I welcome you to pause here and reflect, like, what is your internal dialogue like? Is it judgy? Is it curious? Is it kind? Do you hear anything or sense anything? Maybe you don't hear words, but maybe it comes up in images or a felt texture or pressure or somewhere in the body. I had a client who was really working on this, and when we were slowing the process down of noticing their thoughts, we started to recognize how much she wanted to be productive, and this idea that producing connected her to her values of self-worth. And if she didn't have a productive day where she crossed off enough, she didn't feel enough, right? We've talked about this cycles. It's so common. I know I can relate too. And so, yeah, we can work on all of the external strategies of biohacking and time saving strategies and all of the systems that can be helpful. But what I've noticed in over a decade of coaching is that it boils down to the self talk. How are you talking to yourself? And so we worked on reframing the thoughts away from judgments of not enough, faster, harder, stronger. Come on, you need to prove yourself. You need to earn your keep. You need to earn your dinner. Instead, by saying, I'm doing enough. I can trust myself that I'm going to get all of this done when I can get it done. I am enough just in this moment. And really learning to offer self-compassion to those places of ouch inside that need some extra tender love and care. Another common block that happens for people that prevents them from practicing self-love is letting emotions, hairy emotions like shame and guilt take over. And those emotions are on the opposite spectrum of self love because, in some form or another, they are telling you you are not enough, or you're not doing enough, or you're not good, or even you did a bad thing, so you deserve to be punished. And I know you could be listening and being like, well, we need some critical voices sometimes because they hold us in line, they keep us in check. And I wouldn't say it needs to be critical, right? We can offer ourselves some truth, some loving truth. We can be kind while we're sharing truth without it sounding or being critical and activating shame within ourselves or within others or guilt. And of course, we can't control how other people's emotions come up, but this energy that we talk to ourselves with, it's like we can talk to ourselves and give ourselves a kind, stern talking to of, hey, let's get our, shit together in a kind way. Like, hey, I notice you've been slacking on your commitments here. What are you avoiding right here? I really care. I want to know. Right? We can talk to ourselves in a way that's stern, that offers a sense of like, I'm here. I am staying grounded for you because I care about you, and curious, like, what's going on here? What are we avoiding? What are the blocks? What's coming up? And how can I support you in moving through whatever's holding you back? And when we can meet ourselves with that energy, it's way more supportive long term than the what the fuck are you doing? You're so lazy. Why don't you have your shit together? You're this old and you don't have a car and you don't have a house and you don't have a husband and you don't have kids and your bank account's this and da 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 da. Like nobody's ever going to love you. You're never going to get that promotion. Like, God, when I just hear that sense of dialogue, it's exhausting. I want to put my head under a pillow. And I know when I work with clients, it's not supportive. And one of the first aspects that we do together is just gaining awareness to be able to listen and notice, oh, that's my internal self-talk. I never really thought about that. Oh, there's another way that I can be in relationship to myself. Wow. And then once we turn that energy within ourselves to be kinder, to be curious, to hold the space, again, we can then take that energy and bring it into our other relationships. So I welcome you to pause here and reflect on, what is your relationship to self-love like? How do you practice self-love intentionally or not? And you might be really surprised. Like, actually, I, do a 10-minute skincare routine at night, and that's a form of self-love. And yes, that is that you are caring for your skin, one of the largest organs in your body. Like, that is beautiful. And what else? Maybe you're a new parent and you recognize you're being really self-critical. Of course, you are trying and doing your best, but you're talking to yourself as if you're not, or you're not doing enough. What would it sound like to give yourself a little bit more self-love? Do you put your head on the pillow at night, somebody, maybe working nonstop in your corporate career or in your startup, and feel like you didn't do enough, and you're racing to all the things you still need to do, and where you dropped the ball, and where you missed the mark, and where you can be better and stronger and faster and smarter? What would it be like to shift that dialogue and to whisper to yourself at night, placing your hand on the heart and saying, you did enough, sweetheart. You did a great job. You showed up fully as best as you could today. And tomorrow's a new day where you get to begin again. When we practice self-love, like really deep internal self-love, talking to ourselves with kindness, accepting ourselves just as we are, unconditioned from productivity, from people pleasing, from perfectionism, when we can create that space, honestly, this is, I think, one of the huge markers to decrease stress, because we're not creating more internal stress and struggle with ourselves. We're accepting ourselves just as we are and knowing that, yeah, we care. Just because we accept ourselves doesn't mean we give up, roll over, and play dead. We show up again and again because we care, because we're hopefully then living in alignment with our values. So the practice of self-love can look like a few things. It can look like writing affirmations to yourself. It can look like mirror work, where you stand in front of a mirror and you tell yourself all the things you love and appreciate about yourself. It can be sitting in a meditation practice and sending loving kindness to yourself. Wishes of, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I experience ease. Maybe self-love is sitting in a meditation practice and visualizing the seeds of love inside of yourself just glowing and blooming and expanding throughout all of the cells in your body. Maybe self-love is you lying down or in a bubble bath or your shower and giving yourself that sense of warmth, that same loving energy that you feel when you're with one of your friends or family members that's really loving, that I prompted you with at the beginning of this episode. Giving that same warm energy to yourself. And self-love is free. You don't need to go buy yourself a pair of new shoes or buy yourself flowers or that delicious cupcake you've had your eyes on. You, of course, can. Those are things that make you happy. Go for it. But self-love is free, and we can give it to ourselves at any moment of any day, and it can be as little as 10 seconds long. But it's a practice to meet ourselves and love ourselves first before we open our eyes and look into a world. As Brene Brown says, if we look into the world for proof that we don't belong or that we're not lovable, we're going to find it. And so it's really important that we tune our internal antennas to connect to this essence of self-love first so that we can then attract that and give that away and also receive it and know that we're enough just as we are. So to reflect on some action steps to offer you as we step into this season of love and continued winter hibernation in the Northern Hemisphere is to, one, notice the way that you talk to yourself. And again, maybe that's not in words, maybe you sense it in colors or images or a felt sense or sensation. And then two, see if you can challenge that internal dialogue to be kinder, to be more loving. And sometimes it's a practice to explore, what does loving sound like? And if that feels challenging to touch into, I want you to think about the people in your life that have those qualities of loving. And what does that sound like and feel like? And what does that then feel like to give that to yourself? And what can that sound like to give that to yourself? So I challenge you for this month to really connect to this practice of self-love every day. If it's just even 2 minutes, to love yourself, to meet yourself with kindness, first thing before you get out of bed, last thing you do before you go to sleep. Notice how this practice starts to shift and ripple into all areas of your life. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Center in the City podcast. As always, it is such an honor to enter your ears, your heart, and your mind. I would love, love, love to hear how this episode's landing for you, what's coming up for you. It might be a really deep emotional one, and that's okay. I welcome that. Reach out. Reach out to me on Instagram at OneWade. Send me a DM. Reach out to me in the show notes. There's a link to my contact page if you're more of an email person. And let's continue the discussion and let's support each other practicing more self-love. So maybe even send this episode to somebody in your life that you know could use some more self-love. And let's continue to inspire each other because we need that. The world needs that. And let's do our part to add to more good in this world. Until next time, stay centered.